Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump says Iran is begging to make a deal and reveals a mystery present that Iran has given to the U.S. The latest from the president's first cabinet meeting since the conflict in Iran began. Israel saying it killed a senior Iranian naval commander that was responsible for mining and blockading the Strait of Hormuz. Republicans eyeing a second mega bill to overcome Democrat opposition on key issues. The effort is welcomed by Republicans, but some pieces of the plan may not fall into place. Plus, more on the funding of the Department of Homeland Security. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says commercial trucking schools were allowed to self-certify under the Biden administration. Duffy's comments follow a series of accidents involving drivers illegally working in the U.S. The European Parliament approves a trade deal with the U.S., but with strings attached. EU lawmakers adding amendments to the legislation in case the agreement falls apart. Nearly 70 New York officials honoring Shen Yun Performing Arts Global Impact, recognizing its mission to revive a culture that was almost lost. This as Shen Yun kicks off its packed first night at Lincoln Center.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Trump says Iran is now desperate to make a deal after its military was obliterated. He also reveals that Iran let through 10 oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz in what he calls a present to the U.S. Joining us now is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao on the North Lawn of the White House. Good afternoon, Iris. What is the latest from the cabinet meeting this morning?
Good afternoon to you as well, Don. So this is the first cabinet meeting since the conflict in Iran started. And Special Envoy Steve Witkoff today confirming at the meeting that the U.S. has indeed presented a 15-point peace plan to Iran. And while Iran has reportedly rejected that plan, President Trump today is doubling down, saying that Iran is talking and they're begging to make a deal with the U.S. He also stresses that it's Iran who's desperate, not the U.S. Watch.
They want to make a deal. The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to shit. Like the fake news New York Times, which writes so fake. I mean, I read a story today that I'm desperate to make a deal. If I was desperate, he'd be the first to know. Pete, let's get the hell out of there. I'm the opposite of desperate. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I want to know. In fact, we have other targets we want to hit before we leave.
And today, the president also revealed what he talked about earlier this week. That is a mysterious, a big present that Iran has given to the U.S. Today, the president announcing that it was actually Iran letting through 10 oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. And he says that it showed him that they are talking with the right group of people in Iran who has some real control. That said, though, the president is also doubling down on his threats to Iran, saying that if Iran does not make peace, he will make them face their worst nightmare. Watch.
But they now have the chance, that is Iran, to permanently abandon their nuclear ambitions and to chart a new path forward. We'll see if they want to do it. If they don't, we're their worst nightmare.
And we have the ultimate deal maker to make it happen. But in the meantime, as I said yesterday, the Department of War will continue negotiating with bombs.
And meanwhile, U.S. Central Command is announcing fresh results, including the U.S. have now hit over 10,000 targets in Iran and having destroyed about 2/3 of their naval capabilities. And of course, now the president is saying that there are more targets left in Iran that the U.S. might hit before leaving. And of course, it comes as both the U.S. and Israel today also confirming that they have killed a senior Iranian naval commander who was responsible for blocking the Strait of Hormuz. Don.
So there were a lot of serious discussions on military actions this morning, but with that being said, a number of points of levity as well. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So the president, as always managed to make some jokes at a serious cabinet meeting like this amid the war that really made the whole room laugh at one point. So at one point he was asked by a reporter about whether he will send U.S. troops into Iran to take its enriched uranium stockpiles. And this is his answer. Watch.
Are you going to go in for the uranium? Like, how do you secure Iran? And
let's assume I was or I wasn't. Why would I ever answer a question?
Can you accomplish
what kind of a question? Am I going to go in for the, oh yeah, I'm going in. We're going in tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
And the president was also joking about Venezuela, saying that he's so popular in that country right now that he might consider running for president there after his presidency here in the U.S. Don.
Okay, Iris, thank you. Israel confirming it has killed a top Iranian naval commander, the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy. Defense Minister Israel Katz and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave an update this morning.
Last night, in a precise and lethal operation, the IDF eliminated the commander of the IRGC Navy tank Siri, along with senior naval command officials. The man directly responsible for the terrorist operation of mining and blocking the Strait of Hormuz was struck and eliminated. This is a clear message to all senior members of the Iranian terrorist organization, the Revolutionary Guards, which currently controls Iran. The IDF will hunt you down and eliminate you, one by one. This is also an important message to our American partners. We will continue operating in Iran with full force to achieve the war's objectives.
Last night, we eliminated the commander of the IRGC Navy. This man had a great deal of blood on his hands. He was also the one who led the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. This is yet another example of cooperation between us and our friend, the United States, toward the common goal of achieving the objectives of the war.
The Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council reportedly saying today that Iran is charging fees for ships to safely transit the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, the Israeli military is continuing ground operations in southern Lebanon. The IDF says more than 350 Hezbollah terror infrastructure sites were targeted and over 330 terrorists eliminated.
President Trump is urging Congress to renew a key surveillance tool as the U.S. military operation in Iran continues. He's calling for an 18-month extension of Section 702 of FISA, which allows intelligence collection on foreign targets. The program can also collect data involving Americans who are in contact with those targets without a warrant. President Trump says the authority is critical to national security, especially during the conflict with Iran, but the program has faced bipartisan criticism over past abuses. The president has also criticized the program itself. Congress is now weighing whether and how to extend it. The EPA issuing an emergency fuel waiver to expand ethanol blended gasoline sales nationwide. The waiver lets refineries sell E15 and removes federal limits on E10 gasoline. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin says the move reduces reliance on foreign oil and supports American energy independence. It comes as the cost of fuel continues to rise in the global market as the Iranian regime disrupts trade through the Strait of Hormuz. The waiver goes into effect May 1st and will last 20 days. The temporary 20-day waiver could be extended if market conditions continue to threaten supply. Republicans in Congress are eyeing a strategy to overcome stalemates on a number of issues, including DHS and Pentagon funding and the Save America Act. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the report.
Senate Republicans are eyeing a second mega bill to bypass Democrat opposition on key issues. They're eyeing a process that led to the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was signed into law last summer. Senator Lindsey Graham said he's moving expeditiously on this after he got the okay from President Trump and the Senate leadership to take this approach. Republicans are looking to use something called a budget process to overcome the stalemate on ICE funding and other issues. With regards to ICE funding, this approach is Republicans essentially telling Democrats that if they don't agree to a deal that the White House has already put forth on changes to ICE policy, Republicans say they'll move ICE funding alone and bypass Democrats' demands altogether. Their idea is that if they separate ICE funding from the broader DHS bill, Democrats might be more likely to give the votes needed to pass the rest of the funding for the DHS and hopefully end the airport chaos that we've seen due to TSA staffing issues. Republicans are also eyeing in this bill funding for the Pentagon, potentially fulfilling the administration's request of a $200 million supplemental package for the war in Iran. This is something House Speaker Mike Johnson said he's glad is on the table, considering Democrats' pushback on the issue.
I don't even think they would agree to vote on a bill that would simply restock our munitions. We've used some of those, as you know, in Operation Epic Fury. And we've got to do that. It's a necessity. The first job of the federal government is to protect the people.
Senate leadership is also saying they want to add the Save America Act into this mega bill, but whether that can be done is questionable, considering the fact that the Save America Act is about voting laws and not about the budget. Even sponsors of the Save America Act, like Senator Mike Lee, said that it's impossible to do. Here's why.
The restrictions themselves have basically zero chance of meeting the standard to pass through budget reconciliation. So look, regardless, there are other reasons out there to do budget reconciliation. Do not be fooled into thinking that we can set down the Save America Act, and just pick it up on budget reconciliation. That's not going to work.
The very fact that Senate leadership is trying to use this approach to take off some of the pressure from the Trump administration on the Save America Act has drawn ire from some House conservatives. You have people like Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna saying that this is the Senate trying to make it look like they're working on a solution that they know will fail. But even if Republicans are able to put other measures in this reconciliation bill, like the funding for the Iran war and ICE, it won't happen overnight. It will likely take months to complete the process. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The TSA says some airports are experiencing the longest wait times in TSA history. NTD's Jason Blair has more from a hearing on Capitol Hill, as yesterday marks the 40th day of a partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security.
The shutdown has caused massive disruptions across our airports and travel system nationwide, weakened our nation's cybersecurity posture, and left states unsupported.
Representatives from 4 Department of Homeland Security agencies testified before Congress while the department is in its 6th week of a shutdown. The TSA administrator says some airports are seeing record wait times at security checkpoints.
Now, multiple major airports are experiencing days where 40 to 50% of their staff are calling out. This has led to the highest wait times in TSA history, with some wait times greater than 4.5 hours.
McNeil says assaults on TSA officers are also at a record high.
Unfortunately, we have seen an over 500% increase in the frequency of assaults on our officers since this shutdown began. This is unacceptable and will not be tolerated.
The DHS shutdown will end once Democrats and Republicans reach a funding agreement for the department. Democrats are holding out, demanding reforms to ICE.
Democrats want to ensure that before we give even more money to ICE and CBP, which is already flush with cash, by the way, that we rein in the deadly abuses we saw in Minneapolis.
It is unfortunate that Senate Democrats chose to shut down DHS and weaken our national security posture for their own political gain, especially at such a critical time and heightened threat environment across the homeland.
At this point, newly hired officers will not be able to work on the checkpoint until well after the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This is a dire situation. We are facing a potential perfect storm of severe staffing shortages and an influx of millions of passengers at our airports for the World Cup games in less than 80 days.
Reporting on Capitol Hill, Jason Blair, NTD News.
New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill has signed legislation to prevent law enforcement, including ICE agents, from wearing masks. New Jersey is the 2nd state this year to enact a ban on face coverings. The new law also requires officers to present identification prior to arresting or detaining someone. The Trump administration is already suing New Jersey over one of Sherrill's executive orders. That order prohibits federal immigration agents from making arrests in non-public areas of state property, such as correctional facilities and courthouses. ICE says its officers wear masks to prevent doxing, adding that agents carry badges and credentials. Washington State's Governor Bob Ferguson signed a similar law banning law enforcement from wearing masks earlier this month. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says his department is addressing the dangers posed by truck drivers working in the U.S. illegally. During a cabinet meeting today, Duffy blamed the department's policies under the previous Biden administration.
The last administration, Mr. President, they let truck driving schools self-certify that they were qualified to train truck drivers. And so this is like the Leering Center. So you pay $800 and you get a certificate that you passed a CDL driving school. And again, they have no skills. They don't have the knowledge and they don't have the skills. They haven't gone through any of the testing. And then they get licenses and they're killing Americans on our roads.
Duffy's comments follow a series of fatal accidents involving commercial drivers illegally working in the U.S. Last month, the Transportation Department announced it had revoked certifications for more than 550 commercial driving schools that train truckers and bus drivers. The move followed an investigation by the department's Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, which revealed hundreds of safety violations. The department has also imposed stricter English language requirements for commercial truckers. Over 9,000 truckers were pulled off the job last year after failing English proficiency checks. And the president and top leaders speaking out after the deadly shooting of a college student by an illegal immigrant in Chicago. The case fueling fresh debate about immigration policy. Here's more.
President Trump and top officials are speaking out after a deadly shooting in Chicago involving an illegal immigrant.
Less than 1 week ago, a precious 18-year-old college student named Sheridan Gorman was shot and killed while walking in a park innocently.
Authorities say the suspect is a Venezuelan national who had previously been arrested and released twice. Homeland Security says the suspect was first apprehended by Border Patrol at the southern border in May 2023 and released into the U.S. Around a month later, he was arrested again in Chicago for shoplifting and released a second time. The White House also outlining the timeline.
The suspect in custody for murdering her is a Venezuelan illegal alien who was caught and released at the border by the Biden administration in May of 2023. To make matters even worse, this monster was also released from local custody again after a shoplifting arrest, where in the sanctuary city of Chicago in June of 2023.
Homeland Security saying ICE has now filed a detainer, requesting that he not be released again. House Speaker Mike Johnson is now calling for change.
Sheridan Gorman should still be with us and her entire life still ahead of her, but it's the same fate that befell Laken Riley, too, and so many others. How many more times does this story have to be repeated?
And President Trump urging voters to back stricter policies.
Every American needs to know that the larger majorities in the House and Senate, Republicans will, remember this, will end sanctuary jurisdictions once and for all. We need a few more votes.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker responding, saying the issue reflects broader national failures.
I agree, there have been real failures. Those failures, of course, extend beyond the borders of Illinois. That's their national failures, a failure to have comprehensive immigration reform, a failure of the president to follow his own edict to go after the worst of the worst.
Gorman's family is calling for accountability. They say her death should not be reduced to a policy debate.
Meta and Google losing a landmark case. A Los Angeles jury found Meta and Google negligent for designing social media platforms that are harmful to young users. Joining us now is Jeremy Rosenthal, trial attorney and founding partner of Rosenthal, Kalabis, and Therian. Jeremy, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. So to start off, I just want to get your thoughts on this. Do you think the results of this case could be a potential bellwether, if you will, amid social media addiction lawsuits against big tech? How significant was this ruling?
It's pretty significant, and I think the answer to your question is yes and no. First off, this lawsuit relied on California law specifically, and it was able to navigate some of the federal restrictions that have historically protected Meta and other social platform users. And such social platform companies. So think of it like this. There's the First Amendment to the United States Constitution, which prohibits the government or a court from coming in and really regulating what is said and content that's like that. And if you're going to award money to somebody who was their mental health was damaged as a result of your product, well, you're essentially, that's what you potentially run afoul of is the First Amendment. Also, there's Section 230 of the Communications Act, which also says that as a social media platform, you're not liable for things that other people post on your platform. Where this is a little bit different was that the plaintiffs in this case were able to sort of get around some of those hurdles in the state of California because of California law. So I think if you're Meta and you're Google and you're any other social platform company, I think you're sort of hoping that the damage is limited to maybe California or things like that. On the downside, certainly the plaintiffs in this case gave everybody a roadmap. I think all of us are sort of thinking that this is kind of a big tobacco moment, right? Where essentially tobacco companies had to start forking out and paying out a lot of money for this type of liability. So I don't know that there's a clear-cut answer, but this was certainly a good day for these plaintiffs in California.
Okay, so Jeremy, a number of things I'd like to follow up on of what you said just now. I'll start with Section 230. You know, as you're aware, often companies cite Section 230 that it's not liable for user content, right? So tell us a bit more how, in this case, the plaintiffs sort of sidestepped that. How was it successful to get around it, and why did it work?
Essentially, what the plaintiffs were arguing was that it wasn't the content that was the issue, it's the algorithm that's the issue. And not only that, but some of the algorithms that were used or some of the things that were used were misused, not only under California law, but also by these platforms' own guidelines. Things like never-ending roles, never-ending scrolling mechanisms, the specific algorithms sort of engineered to kind of psychologically addict you. And not only that, you know, you've in the context of tobacco, right? You had tobacco knowingly running red lights when it came to engineering their product to biologically addict you. So I think that the argument here around Section 230 was really comparable, which is this is not this is not a content case. We're not talking about the content. This is a product's liability case. That's essentially how the plaintiffs argued it.
So to your point that this could be a tobacco moment, in the cases against tobacco companies over the years, what happened was that now tobacco companies have to issue warnings, right? So if you're saying this is a potentially tobacco moment, do big tech companies have to warn young users of the potential risks?
I would think that would be, at a minimum, really part of it. What you're really afraid of, if you're big tech, are the floodgates opening up and people bringing these lawsuits really all over the country, all over the state of California, and then having to shell out millions, if not billions of dollars in these types of judgments. And that's if you're a plaintiff lawyer or you're a class action lawyer, that's exactly what you're eyeballing right now. Is you're saying, okay, look, let's recruit everybody that can make a claim that their mental health was damaged because of some of these platforms, and then let's go and get a really, really, really big judgment. That is what would really potentially shape, if you will, how these companies, how their conduct is going forward, whether they're going to follow their own regulations or their own guidelines or state regulations. So I think your major fear, if you are these big companies, is getting your pantsuit off here.
Okay, you brought up mental health issues, and that was part of the defense by the social media companies. So let me just get your comments on that. These companies saying that their platforms aren't intentionally harmful, and teens' mental health is complex, right? Tied to external factors like home, and specific to this case was the plaintiff's COVID isolation and other factors. So what are your comments on this?
I think if that's how I think that's how you would defend these cases, right? If you're Meta or if you're YouTube, you defend them by saying, listen, first off, where's mom and dad in all this, right? When does personal responsibility become our job and not mom and dad's job, right? We're not raising your kids. That's your job. That's certainly part of it. Also, yes, how can you pin us for mental health issues with this one child where, yes, they were isolated because of COVID, where being a teenager is hard, where there's physiological and biological things that can certainly impact mental health. It's very hard to isolate the injury, if you will. It's very hard to isolate it and pin it on one issue and one issue alone. It tells you that this jury was probably very angry.
Okay, just a couple more things that I'm wondering here, Jeremy. And one of them is there anything to be said about what appears to be, relatively small damages of about $6 million between Google and Meta, which those two companies, they're massive companies.
Mm-hmm. Right. They could sneeze and lose that much money in the sofa in the front lobby, right? So yeah, that's definitely, I think, part of some of the debate. But I think you're sort of really curious as to how these plaintiffs were able to sort of navigate around and swim through all of the sharks in the water, if you will, that normally sort of snatch them up. This would be, in sports terms, this would be like the U.S. national team surrendering a goal to a Little League team. How did it happen? And do we need to worry about what other problems do we have around here if that's what's going on here, right? So I think you're a lot more alarmed by the legal precedent that it's set than you are, obviously, the $6 million. $6 million is money to me and a lot of money to you, but like we were talking, they could lose that in the back of a taxi cab on the way to the airport. That's not a big deal to them at all.
Right. Okay, just one last thing, Jeremy. Google and Meta, they plan to appeal, right? So what is your feeling about this case, the strength of this case when it comes to surviving scrutiny in higher courts?
Well, it's certainly going to be an issue. And look, you've got the First Amendment, which essentially if you're the plaintiff, you want to do is you want to sort of take it out of the content regulation. That's why they characterize it, if you will, as a products case, essentially, because when you sort of characterize it as a products case, it really lowers it. And when you're talking about the algorithm, you're essentially saying, well, look, we're not targeting the content. We're not telling you what you can show kids and can't show kids, obviously, within bounds. What we're talking about is how you feed it to them. How is it that the child gets a notification on their phone, a push notification? The intent is to check it for 8 seconds, yet the child spends 20 minutes on the phone. Those are the mechanisms, right, the psychological things that I think the plaintiff is pushing. And the question is, under First Amendment scrutiny, where does that really fall, right? Are we regulating content by regulating the algorithm? And if so, where's the boundary, right, between the product liability, between the product being at fault, and we don't like the content that you're reading? It's certainly a very complicated question.
Well, all right, Jeremy, let's leave it there, but terrific analysis today. Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
Judge Alvin Hellerstein today strongly advocating former Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife's right to counsel. The Maduros were back in court today requesting a dismissal of their cases and the criminal charges against them. They want the case dismissed because they say they can't pay their legal fees. We're now joined live by NTD's Arlene Richards at the courthouse. Arlene, good afternoon. Why can't the Maduros pay their legal fees?
Well, good afternoon, Don. So their attorneys are saying that the government is blocking them from getting access to funds from the Venezuelan government. And apparently the Venezuelan government is willing to provide them with funding to pay for their defense here. But the attorneys here, the defense attorneys are saying that they applied for this request, for this permission for them to get this funding. But the federal government here denied them that access. And they're saying that this is violating their right to counsel, and they want this whole case dismissed. Now, on the other hand, the government is saying that, well, you've been sanctioned. The government of Venezuela, as well as the Maduros, have been under U.S. law sanctions for years. And because of that, they cannot allow for these sanctioned government to transfer funds to sanctioned individuals here in the U.S. But they're saying, we have an alternative. We have an exception here. You can use your personal funds. We will allow for that. Or you can find some other source of funds to pay for your legal fees. But they're saying that they cannot allow for a sanctioned government to then transfer funds to sanctioned individuals here in the U.S.
But Arlene, if that's true, if it's true that they don't have any money, what options do the Maduros have?
Well, that was discussed today. One of the things that can happen is that the judge could appoint them an attorney. They talked about appointing a federal defender to represent them throughout this case. But their attorneys are concerned about that because they say this is a huge case that's going to require a lot of resources. And it's going to be a lot of money that maybe the federal defenders will not have access to. They say, the investigation is going to require them to possibly go to Venezuela to get witness interviews, and it's going to be very extensive, and probably it would be better for private attorneys to handle this because they would have the resources. The other thing is that the judge is saying that he might find a way to have the government reconsider their decision and allow for this money to come in from the Venezuelan government.
So, Arlene, the judge is strongly hinting that he wants the Maduros to get access to the Venezuelan funds. Talk to us. What are his concerns?
So as we said earlier, he's concerned about their right to counsel. He's saying this is something that, U.S. law allows for all defendants to have a right to counsel, and he's concerned that it would be a serious violation of their rights if they could not get an attorney. He's also concerned about the resources, as we talked about. He doesn't think that a federal defender will have the proper resources, and he also mentioned that federal defenders have a lot of cases that they have to handle, and would they have the resources or the wherewithal to be able to defend these defendants fully as they need. So he's concerned about the resources. He's also concerned about the sanctions. Now, this wasn't brought up by the defense, but the judge did say that he feels that these sanctions are no longer valid. He said the Maduros are here in the U.S., so they are no longer a threat to anyone. And he also, in terms of human rights violations, that's what the sanctions are about. So he's saying they're here in the U.S. now, so they cannot cause any human rights violations in Venezuela. He also said that, U.S. is doing business with Venezuela now, with the oil business. He's saying, now that we're doing business with Venezuela, there's no national security risk or no concern over foreign policy. So he feels as though those things don't matter anymore and that this money should be released. He's also emphasizing that the right to counsel is paramount. He's saying the right to counsel is paramount. It should override these sanctions that they're talking about now. And he looked at the executive order that was originally prepared by President Obama, and he made a decision based on that. He's saying those things happened back then, but things have changed now, and now he wants somehow a remedy for these people to get this money.
So, Arlene, just real quick, one final thing. Did the judge make a ruling today?
He did not make a ruling, and it's because this is an unusual case, as he said. He's concerned about whether he has the power to ask the federal government or this agency to change their decision. He's not sure that he, as the sitting judge here, can say that, because the government is saying that this is the improper forum. This is not the right forum for them to request, for them to reconsider this decision. He's saying that has to be done by another agency where they would file a complaint against the federal government through some other venue. Now, the judge is also concerned that, is there another way that these defendants can get access to funding? Because the government is saying they think that they do have access to personal funding, but they don't want to get that money and pay for the defense. They want to rely on a third party. And the judge is saying, well, I don't know about that. He's saying, I have to think about it. This is a tough decision to make. He wants to make a decision as soon as possible, but he's saying it could take a little while.
All right, Arlene, it sounds like things are getting excited over there. Thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you.
An economist says the Federal Reserve is overstaffed, inefficient, and outdated and should be downsized and modernized. We talked to him after this break. Stay with us.
Kids love it. Parents trust it. Obviously. Explore GJW Plus Kids Series and Gyeongjong Campus courses led by expert educators. This is spectacular. Children will learn values like respect, responsibility, and knowledge in language, science, and more. Wow. All while having fun. Perfect. Subscribe today at GJW Plus Kids, where learning meets fun.
I was a young dad of 3 amazing kids. I was finally following my dreams. Just when you feel like life is starting to come together, you get kind of hit in the face. I was born with a congenital heart defect and had open heart surgery as a kid. I was supposed to go to the heart doctor once a year, and I finally went. He listened to my heart, and I'll never forget, he sat back and he said, yeah, it's time for open heart surgery, or you risk your aorta rupturing, and that's it. I was scared out of my mind. The night before my open heart surgery, I made a goodbye video for my kids. Be strong. Take care of your mom. I love you guys.
Seeing, all the kids hug him goodbye and hoping that they were going to be able to hug him again.
I love you. But I did make it, thanks to the work of the American Heart Association. So that's why I'm asking you to join me. Please call now or go to helpheart.org. For only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can help get the next person trained in CPR, get the next hospital certified in high-quality cardiovascular care, as well as fund the next medical breakthrough like these heart valves that helped save my life. When you give $19 a month with your credit card, we'll send you this special t-shirt to show you're a part of our community of monthly donors.
I'm most grateful that I get to have a husband that I get to grow old with, and a husband that gets to be there for his children.
I believe without the American Heart Association, I would not be here today. If this can happen to me, it can happen to you, it can happen to anybody. Your donation can literally help save a life. Please call the number on your screen or go to helpheart.org now to become a monthly donor.
Getting prescription glasses from Select Specs is easier than you might think. Select your frames from our £6 range in-house brands or our extensive designer collections. Then enter, upload or email your latest prescription and our website will analyze it and help you select the best lenses and options to suit you. Click to place the order and your new Select Specs glasses are delivered right to your door. Ordering your prescription glasses is as easy as 1, 2, C with Select Specs and selectspecs.com.
Joining us now to talk about the U.S. Central Bank is Paul Mueller, economist at the American Institute for Economic Research. Paul, good afternoon. I saw your article. It's titled, "Bigger Isn't Better, A Case for Downsizing the Federal Reserve." You made some great points. So to start off, maybe you can tell us a bit more about why you think this is, and then after you explain, maybe you can, I'll have you address some counter arguments.
Sure. So the Federal Reserve is a big system that has just grown over time. It's grown in terms of its balance sheet, its number of employees, and there's not really a lot of market forces to make it grow smaller over time. Even though technology has gotten better, even though things have become automated with artificial intelligence, and so the point of the piece and the point in general is that if we want an effective central bank, smaller might actually be much more effective. Not only will it save money, but it will also, I think, help it improve its processes in terms of the data it uses and the ways in which it evaluates what's going on in the economy.
So, Paul, you say that the Fed's self-funding model reduces incentives and increases, bloat, and it reduces cost control, but the Fed has to be decentralized. It has to be independent, right? Does getting funding from outside sources jeopardize this independency of decision making?
Well, that's a good question. In terms of, I don't necessarily suggest that we change the funding model entirely. Again, part of the independence of the Fed means that it can make decisions to reform itself. Now, again, maybe they need a little push, a little pressure from the outside. That's why we write and talk about it. And maybe Congress could apply more pressure than they have. But we don't necessarily have to fundamentally change the funding model of the Fed, which might undercut some of its independence. But rather, what I'm hoping for is that with a new chairman, if Kevin Warsh is confirmed, that one of his priorities will be to reduce the headcount, focus on streamlining things, focus on overhead. And I think, again, it's a big organization that employs a lot of people with high salaries. And I think it would definitely go a long way towards reassuring the American people that they're managing our monetary system well if they're managing their internal budget well.
So the Federal Reserve, doesn't just decide on rates, right? It also monitors a lot of banks. It also looks at financial stability, not just domestically, but abroad as well. Do you think a reduction of 20 to 30% will still allow the Fed to do all the things I mentioned?
I think so. Again, part of what's happened at the Federal Reserve over the last 5 to 15 years is there's been a great deal of mission creep. And so you're right that the Federal Reserve banks do engage in regulation of commercial banks, but they also have built in a lot of climate issues, some DEI and ESG issues, things that are not central to financial health and solvency of the banking system. And so part of the streamlining and the reducing the headcount, I hope, would involve a better focus on the core regulatory issues in terms of the safety of banks, how much capital they have, what kind of reserves they have, the risk profiles they're taking. And again, we have examples from Europe where Europe uses or has fewer employees in much of their banking system, both their Central European Bank and in many of the national central banks there. So I think this can be done. I think we don't have to sacrifice the kind of core financial regulation that the Fed engages in, and we can cut out both the waste and also just the more politicized mission creep that has gone on in the Fed.
So are you talking about overall general cuts, or are there any specific roles or departments you think could be reduced or eliminated without harming its core mission?
Well, I think the programs that focus on DEI and environmental issues, those could be cut back or even gotten rid of entirely. I think that they could probably scale back how many economists they have working there. Again, with AI increasing people's productivity, giving us access to models and information, I don't see why they need 800 to 1,000 economists employed there as productivity goes up with these new tools. So that would be an area to cut. And then just the data processing and data sheet analysis and building. Again, part of why I wrote this and part of what I hope the next chair of the Fed does is really begin taking advantage of the revolution in computer programming and software that we see going on all around us. So there's great opportunity. There's this sort of external technological change that I think can provide a lot of impetus and cover for systemic changes within the Federal Reserve, again, to streamline things, to make it more effective and efficient at what it does.
Okay, so Paul, let me bring up a couple more points from your article. You talk about the Fed relies on slow lagging indicators. So in your view, what should it rely on that is more up-to-date and accurate?
Well, there's a number of databases and trackers that track real exchanges in real time. So we don't have to wait for government numbers that report what happened 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 6 months ago. We have, for example, Trueflation is a website that is measuring transactions and the price level in real time, and it's built on a lot of data. Many of the government data systems, the way that they aggregate and look at prices and employment and so forth, are actually fairly outdated. Some of them are based on survey data. They're not necessarily comprehensive. They're not up to date on real-time transactions. So there's a lot of room for improvement, both with market data and potentially building some of their own internal tools. Obviously, the Federal Reserve has access to a tremendous amount of financial data and information with the banks it regulates and its own kind of processing system. So again, I think we're at the point now, especially with potentially a new chairman, to really reimagine and rethink how the Fed does business and what kinds of tools it uses to really bring those up to speed, have them be, again, more connected to what's going on right now, and also to incorporate far more actual data and transactions than the Fed has ever really taken into account before.
Okay, just a couple more things, Paul. You say the Fed focuses too much on demand-side factors. What tools does it have to influence supply-side factors? How do you resolve this issue that is focusing too much on demand side?
Well, that definitely is a great question. So the Fed has limited ability to affect the supply side. Again, one of the best things that it can do is to provide a clear and stable framework for how it makes decisions. When it comes to investing, borrowing, making plans, it's really good to have a sense of what interest rates are and what they're going to be in six months or a year, 2 years. It's also helpful to know what kinds of rules is the Fed going to follow? So if GDP numbers come in low, what does that mean? If inflation numbers come in higher, what does that mean? Right now, it's a bit of a black box. The Fed uses a lot of discretion. So they say they're data-driven, and they use that to basically open the door to just deciding what they want to do based on feelings of the people on the FOMC. If instead they had a system like sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the rule right now. There's a rule that they use to calculate, okay, if inflation goes up a certain amount or if unemployment goes down a certain amount, we'll adjust interest rates a certain amount. The Taylor rule. Sorry for the blanking there. The Taylor rule. Then markets would know what to expect, and we wouldn't have to guess every month or two what the FOMC decides to do, and would also not have to worry as much about news factors and political factors influencing what the interest rates are. So again, on the supply side, creating greater certainty and predictability around how they operate, how they set interest rates, that could actually really help long-term planning and investment in the economy.
All right, Paul, it's okay blanking out on the Taylor rule. From what you described of what the rule is, I would have never imagined that it's called the Taylor rule. It has nothing, I don't know, maybe there's a connection, but thank you for speaking with us today, Paul.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
The fight for global energy continues. President Trump says his policies are boosting American energy production with ships and pipelines carrying oil. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum commenting on the issue today, saying Venezuelan energy production is climbing.
The first time in Venezuelan history that they had the free press allowed to come on to essentially where the White House, the Palacio Miraflores, and it was an emotional thing for people that had been for 20 years had never had a chance to be there. So whether it's and then production, it's showing up in production. The American companies that are coming back, most of those American companies have many American Venezuelan team members.
Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado is calling for more transparency and contract security in Venezuela's oil sector. According to Machado, America's supervision of oil revenue is needed to prevent corruption and wrongdoing. At JFK Airport, an ICE agent leapt into action to help save an unresponsive infant who had stopped breathing. In a post on X, the Department of Homeland Security described the actions of an ICE agent who came to the rescue of an infant it said had stopped breathing for nearly 2 minutes. Hearing the cries and panic of the child's family and other passengers, the officer quickly performed a Heimlich maneuver, restoring the infant's breathing, much to everyone's relief. A new book exposing the Chinese Communist Party's practice of forced organ harvesting has hit the New York Times bestseller list. Epoch Times senior editor Jan Nikelic is the author of the book titled Killed to Order: China's Organ Harvesting Industry and the True Nature of America's Biggest Adversary. The new book appeared at number 8 on the New York Times hardcover nonfiction bestseller list. The book covers 20 years of investigations into the CCP's forced organ harvesting from religious believers and prisoners of conscience. It exposes the scale of the system and how it works. The book also explains how the CCP made the West complicit in the crime over the past 3 decades. Nearly 70 New York officials honoring Shen Yun performing arts global impact, recognizing its mission to revive a culture that was almost lost. This as Shen Yun kicks off its packed first night at Lincoln Center. More news after this break. Stay with us.
大提琴不仅仅是一件乐器， 它是有生命、有感情的，需要我们精心的照顾。往往我们一个小小的动作，可能都会对人情绪产生微妙的影响。天鹰的品牌是福星，我们对于传统的理念很荣幸被神韵艺术团选为指定供应商。时间是酿造音色的不可替代的陪伴。我跟大提琴已经有60多年的友情了，每一把琴都有它自己的个性，熟悉它，才能真正发挥它的潜力。所以，我希望给你的每一把琴，都是首先我所信任的。
During high school, I hung with the wrong crowd and I never graduated.
I helped Santiago in many different ways, like all fathers do, because he always wanted to go to college.
I felt a little embarrassed to come back to school, but eventually, once I came here, I knew that it's for a bigger goal.
He was very dedicated, hardworking. He connected with his teachers. He connected with other students. That was one of the key reasons why he was able to keep forging ahead.
It was amazing to see him graduate. This was one thing that meant so much to him, and of course, it meant so much to us too.
With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed. That support is everything.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Shen Yun Performing Arts kicking off its 2.5-week performances at the Lincoln Center here in New York City. Nearly 70 elected officials issued proclamations or congratulatory letters wishing the company great success in this year's performances, which is also its 20th anniversary. Here are the details.
New York officials are praising Shen Yun Performing Arts for its impact over the past 2 decades, highlighting its artistic achievements and cultural contributions. Among the nearly 70 officials are members of Congress, along with New York State senators and assembly members. They also include New York City Council members and dozens of elected officials from counties, cities, and towns across the state. Officials commended artistic director Mr. D.F. and the performers for their exceptional skill and for productions that promote traditional values while inspiring audiences worldwide. Shen Yun tours globally with a mission to revive 5,000 years of traditional Chinese culture, what it describes as China before communism, a culture the Chinese Communist Party has sought to destroy since 1949 when it came to power. Several members of Congress, including Andrew Garbarino, Nicole Malliotakis, Patrick Ryan, and Elise Stefanik, issued proclamations and letters recognizing Shen Yun's accomplishments. Congressman Garbarino also presented the company with a special Congressional Recognition Certificate, honoring what he called its outstanding and invaluable service to the community. Andrea Stewart Cousins, Majority Leader of the New York State Senate, declared March 25, 2026 to be Shen Yun Performing Arts Day. Phil Wong, a council member for New York City's 30th District, praised Shen Yun's mission to celebrate values drawn from thousands of years of traditional Chinese civilization, including themes of virtue, resilience, and harmony. Stephen Newhouse, the executive of Orange County in New York State, praised Shen Yun for serving as a bridge between cultures, fostering greater understanding, respect, and appreciation among people of diverse backgrounds. Orange County is where the company is based. In addition, officials including Woodbury Town Supervisor Jacqueline Hernandez, Newburgh Town Torrance Harvey, and Middletown Mayor Joseph DiStefano echoed that praise, thanking Shen Yun for bringing a rich cultural experience to communities across the region. NTD News, New York.
Shen Yun Performing Arts performed in a front of a packed theater at New York City's Lincoln Center last night. It's the start of 18 shows they will be performing in New York as part of their 20th anniversary tour. NTD is a media sponsor of Shen Yun Performing Arts and has been covering audience reactions since 2006. And theater goers here in the Big Apple were impressed by both the skill of the dancers and the beauty of the tradition of the show on stage. Take a look.
Shen Yun Performing Arts graced the stage at the David H. Koch Theater in New York City on March 25th, taking audiences on a journey through ancient China. Audience members were impressed by the skill and beauty of the performers.
The dancers are so talented, they train so hard. The things they do are not easy. It's very amazing for them to be able to show without words exactly what Chinese culture looks like and what spiritual message that they have to deliver.
I was definitely inspired by the sequins and how they sparkled on the costumes. It brought so much light to the dancers. It was beautiful. I enjoyed so much. The colors were gorgeous. The teals, the vibrant oranges. I think the colors are just so bright and they draw your eye right to the dancers. I enjoyed very much.
Shen Yun's mission is to revive 5,000 years of traditional Chinese culture from before communism, a culture the Chinese Communist regime has been seeking to suppress since taking power in 1949.
There is a Chinese culture outside of what the CCP has imposed. So you get to see that history. You get to see, traditional dances, ethnic dances. You get to see what China was before the CCP took over. They threaten these performances because they don't want people to see that there is a message from China that's not under the control of the CCP. And this, to me, is a crime against all of us, against all of humanity. And so it's a brave and amazing thing that this show continues.
I think everybody should pay homage to their old generations, and they should be able to practice whatever they feel like. I think it's a great show. It's different. I've not seen anything like it, and I think it's a way to express yourself, and it's just like a wonderful experience.
I love the spiritual part, how they mixed very well, how traditions and going back to your own roots, and the ability to use meditation, all traditions was blended into the show with the beautiful design of the costumes.
Based in New York, Shen Yun has been touring the world since 2006, with this year marking its 20th anniversary. Each year, Shen Yun brings an all-new performance with brand new dances, music, and costumes.
The scenery, the colors, the clothes, all the movements, that was very fantastic. And the music, the live music together was very nice experience, very nice experience.
I'm very proud of them. I'm very impressed by them. I'm very inspired by them. What they do is dangerous. What they do is brave. What they do is from the heart, and you can tell. And so I am very impressed with what I've seen here tonight.
I think the show lit the fire in the audience to go and spread the word about being sovereign, connecting to your creator, and staying positive no matter how negative your surroundings. You own that flame inside and you keep it lit.
Shen Yun will be giving performances in New York City until April 12th. NTD News, New York.
2 people are now indicted after an IED was found outside a Florida Air Force base. One suspect is in custody while the other is believed to have fled to China. More news after this break. Stay tuned.
This is how I keep my joints happy.
Omega XL is a powerful natural supplement backed by 40 years of clinical research. Take control of your pain, like Cynthia Bailey.
My knees in particular started giving me pain issues all the way back to my modeling days, from just running through airports, photo shoots. After taking Omega XL, I really started to notice how less stiff I was, especially my knees and my hip. Has Omega XL changed my life? Yes. I barely notice my joint pain anymore. Now I'm literally sprinting through the airports. My secret is Omega XL.
Pick up the phone and call now to get this exclusive TV offer. Buy one Omega XL and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. You'll also get a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. Buy one, get 2 free. A total value of over $115, all for just $49.95. You save more than 55% and shipping is free. Backed by a money-back guarantee and is not available in stores. Operators are standing by, so call now.
The 8th NTD International Piano Competition welcomes distinguished pianists from around the world, celebrating the depth, discipline, and expressive power of the Baroque, classical, and romantic repertoire. September 1st through the 5th, 2026, New York City. Apply at piano.ntdtv.com, honoring the timeless tradition of the piano. Discover the ancient secret to vitality and longevity with Puretang Black Ginseng. Crafted from premium 6-year-old Korean ginseng, each root is carefully nurtured for over 2,260 days, undergoing a traditional 9-round handcrafted process of steaming and drying to unlock full potency and absorption. Experience pure, natural energy with Puretang Black Ginseng. Order now at puretang.com.
Tired of struggling with that heavy leaf blower? Introducing the Bullseye Power Blower. It delivers a massive blowing force, and yet it's so compact and lightweight. Just lock and load the rechargeable battery.